Imagine waking up at dawn to the sound of explosions. Your city's skyline is lit not by sunrise, but by cruise missiles. It's not a movie, it's February 24th, 2022. And for millions of people in Ukraine, it's the moment history breaks. But this wasn't a sudden spark. This was a slow-burning fuse, decades, if not centuries, in the making. So what really triggered the war between Russia and Ukraine? Was it NATO expansion? A revolution in Kyiv? A historical claim? Or geopolitical fear? To understand the most dangerous European conflict of the 21st century, we need to go back, way back. Ukraine and Russia share a long, intertwined history. For centuries, their lands were part of larger empires, Tsarist Russia and later the Soviet Union. But shared history often comes with competing narratives. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Ukraine declared independence. Over 90% of its citizens supported the move. Russia recognized Ukraine's borders and treaties, but over time the relationship frayed. Ukraine leaned toward Europe. Russia hoped to maintain influence in what it considered its near abroad. And so began a decades-long geopolitical balancing act. In 2013, Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych suspended a planned association agreement with the EU. The move sparked protests. Demonstrations in Kyiv's Maidan Square grew into a movement demanding transparency, democracy, and European integration. By early 2014, following violent clashes, Yanukovych fled. His ousting was hailed by some as a revolution, by others, including Moscow, as a Western-backed coup. In the political vacuum, tensions escalated quickly. In March 2014, Russia annexed Crimea. Moscow cited a hastily organized referendum and historic ties to the peninsula. Western governments called it a violation of international law. Moscow argued it was protecting Russian-speaking populations and its strategic interests. Meanwhile, unrest spread to eastern Ukraine. Pro-Russian separatists declared breakaway republics in Donetsk and Luhansk. Kyiv called it illegal. A conflict began, one that would claim thousands of lives over the next 8 years. Efforts were made to de-escalate. The Minsk Song and the two agreements, brokered by France and Germany, outlined steps for a ceasefire and autonomy for parts of Donbas. But implementation stalled. Ukraine and the separatists, supported by Russia, accused each other of violating terms. The front lines hardened, skirmishes continued, diplomacy hit deadlock, and behind the scenes the region remained tense. To Moscow, NATO's eastward expansion after the Cold War raised red flags. Though Ukraine was not a NATO member, its increasing cooperation with the alliance was viewed as a strategic threat by the Kremlin. Russia argued that its security interests were being ignored. The West countered that sovereign nations have the right to choose their alliances. This clash between perceived threat and national sovereignty was one of the key pressure points. On February 24th, 2022, Russian forces entered Ukraine from multiple directions. Moscow stated its goals were to demilitarize and ensure neutrality. It cited NATO, the Donbas, and historical claims. Kyiv, the US, and European leaders condemned the attack as an unprovoked invasion. The world quickly polarized. Sanctions followed, military aid flowed, civilians fled. The conflict grew rapidly. Urban centers saw combat. Infrastructure was hit. Millions were displaced. Ukrainian forces resisted strongly, often with support from Western-provided weaponry. Russia adapted its strategy, shifting focus to the south and east. Neither side expected a short campaign. Both dug in. The effects went far beyond the battlefield. Energy prices soared, grain exports stalled. Europe reconfigured its energy strategy. Finland and Sweden applied for NATO membership. Global alliances shifted. Neutrality became harder to maintain. For many nations, the war redefined international norms. As of 2025, tens of thousands of soldiers and civilians are confirmed dead. Over 10 million people have been displaced internally or abroad. Damage to homes, cities, and infrastructure continues. Both sides accuse each other of targeting civilians. International organizations continue investigations into potential violations of humanitarian law. War's costs are never limited to battlefields. Multiple ceasefire talks have occurred, some facilitated by Turkey, others by China, Saudi Arabia, or the UN. Ukraine proposes full territorial restoration. Russia demands recognition of new borders and security guarantees. Neither side has yet agreed to a permanent settlement. The road to peace remains uncertain. In Kyiv, this is a fight for independence and sovereignty. In Moscow, it's framed as a defensive war against encroachment. In Washington, it's a battle to preserve international rules. In Beijing and the global south, perspectives vary. Some criticize double standards. In war, truth is often contested, and perspective shapes reality. The front lines shift slowly, sanctions continue, casualties mount, war fatigue grows. The future depends on diplomacy, leadership, and global consensus. The stakes remain high, not just for Ukraine and Russia, but for international order itself. If this story made you think, consider both sides, or reflect deeper. Don't just scroll away. Like the video. Share your thoughts. Can a peace be reached? And how? Subscribe to Bizarre Blips for more neutral, deeply researched stories that challenge what we think we know. Because sometimes, history isn't written by victors or villains, but by those who never stopped asking questions.